Take another photograph and document the life that's right. And ways consist of simple things, the days of black and white. And faces from a humble past.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back yet again to Talkin Guff podcast with me, your host, Ruben Django Pouch. Ciao, amore mios. How's everyone getting on out there in the big wide world, huh? In the last episode of the podcast, we had said that we were going to revisit a podcast and talk about the left-right dynamic and the way it's playing out in the world today as we see it. But obviously, something else came up that we just have to talk about. Now, before we do, I'll just throw in one little bit of pepper because it was mental. Did anyone see? Everyone saw it, in fact. The guys who propped up a dead man and brought him to the post office to collect his pension. How fucking mental was that? Like a real life weekend at Bernie's.
I'm just going to send you this voice note because it's a long story that I'm too excited to not or to text it. But I don't know if you know Declan Hockney, but he's like a junkie. He lives around the corner from my house. His dad died this morning, and him and his junkie friend carried his dead dad down to Hosey's to collect his dead dad's pension. And the woman behind the counter nearly died and had to call the guards and an ambulance, and we just drove by it there and there's an ambulance and a guard and the shop is closed. They carried him down, a dead body, to collect the dead body's pension.
You know, isn't it crazy? And the thing about it is that it's multiple things. I suppose when you look at it, you think, oh my God, that's so crazy. It's almost funny, I suppose. But then the reality of it is not funny at all. It's awful. Imagine how desperate you'd have to be to take your dead dad and prop him up and bring him down the post office and try and get his last pension, and B, how fucked up. Like, he has to go to the funeral and all. There's John, his son. He tried to get the last pension. Yeah, he did. He carried him in dead. Yeah, I know. Anyway, awful and funny, I suppose, isn't it? So, obviously, something totally mental has transpired in the last week with regards to COVID-19 and the restrictions in place in this country. Let's get into it. I was watching stuff last week in around the Wednesday and Thursday of last week, and this week, in fact. No, last week. And now we're on, this is Saturday after the COVID restrictions have been lifted, and the Wednesday and Thursday previous to the changing of the coronavirus restrictions, I was watching stuff on the internet that sort of was saying the narrative was crumbling, the veil of the situation was falling, and that, potentially the narrative could no longer be kept up. You know, there was a thing with JP Sears, Awaken with JP, who's really cool, actually. I really like him. Does anyone else know that guy, JP Sears, Awaken with JP? If you do, put in the comment section below, and he was giving 16 reasons as to why the narrative was crumbling, and you can look at it yourself. And then Russell Brand was also saying that certain parameters of the situation made it look like we were totally that what was apparently going on was not going on, and that was on like the Wednesday or the Thursday. And then even on the because even on the Thursday night, I was doing the previous episode of the podcast, editing it, and there's a bit where I say, apparently those 270 doctors who signed a letter to Spotify demanding that they fucking sort out Joe Rogan, those people aren't even medical doctors. Only a very finite amount of them were actually medical doctors, which was one of the points as to the fading or crumbling of the narrative. But this... I was going, fuck, you better reference that, Ruben. And I had seen it on this the Jimmy Dore show, and I was like, I better reference that, I better go find it. And I thought I would only be able to find some obscure reference to the fact that only a small amount of those people were in fact medical doctors. But straight away in the dailymail.co.uk, it was just like, boop. And I thought, wow, that's a mainstream media outlet, and they're saying that. That means, you know, it was one of the reasons, one of the pieces of evidence to me that the narrative was crumbling. And I thought, wow, Jesus, maybe we're on the cusp of something here. And that was Thursday night. And lo and behold, we woke up on Friday morning and it was done. Yeah, it was done. I woke up, I got a message from my friend Noel, who I hope is going to be the guest on the next podcast when we actually tackle the aforementioned podcast that this one has replaced. But he had sent me a message saying something like, you know, we have it best. That's what he said, we have it best. And I was like, what the fuck's going on here? And I went on, I just typed in COVID restrictions. And an article straight away from the Irish Times came up that had said that the NPHET had written a letter to the government advising them that we will lift all restrictions apart from very few of them, like today, straight away. This is what it said in the paper. And one of the things I noticed in it was that they would also lift the vaccine passes. And the reason, apparently, for that was that so many people contracted coronavirus in a country that was so highly vaccinated that the vaccine passes were moot. There was no point. If we had 2 million cases in 19 days when 95% of the population was vaccinated, obviously we wouldn't need vaccine passes because it was moot. And I just was like, oh my God. I couldn't believe it. I was actually so happy. It was like I'd won something. And not in a sort of like, oh, I won, I'm right way, but just more like the feeling of like, oh my God, we're the winners. It was amazing. I was marching around the living room with Lou going, come on, let's go, let's do it. Bah, bah, bah. It was the happiest I had been in ages for multiple reasons. Not because I felt some sort of validation or anything like that, but just because I thought, no, we're not abandoning common sense. We're not going to live in a two-tier society. We're not going to keep up this charade when it obviously isn't being effective. Because we look around, we can see this isn't effective. The measures put in place, they're not really combating the situation. So I just thought, wow, I felt like I had a little bit more faith in humanity. You know what I mean? It was amazing. What did everyone else feel? How did everyone else feel about the situation when they heard that on that Friday morning, when it unfolded that, yes, in fact, they would lift all restrictions, including vaccine passes. The only thing that might stay to the end of February is mask wearing. How did everyone else feel about that? I tell you, one of the first things I did was I went to the cinema on Monday with my young lad. And we went in there like it was a total luxury, as if like, we're here for the cinema, you know? And it was just like, yeah, come on in, you get, lads. It was amazing. Even at the last minute, I thought, no, something's going to go wrong here, because when I booked the tickets online, it said, can you assure us, tick the box if you and all the members of your party have been vaccinated? I just ticked the box anyway. And then when I got there, I was thinking, shit, maybe they're going to go, oh, where's your pass? You said you had it and all. But nothing. No one said anything. Just get in. What are you having? Popcorn? Coca-Cola? Boom. Peanut M&Ms? So, yeah, me and the big man went to the cinema. We went to see Spider-Man. No Way Home, huh? I had heard that it was really, really good. It was really, really good. But I tell you this much, it was sad at the end. Did anyone else see it? What is anyone else's thoughts on the new Spider-Man movie? My young lad was pretty upset, I have to say, at the end of it. And spoiler alert, the bit like where he's, when he goes to see MJ and his fat Asian friend, I can't remember his name, Eric? I can't remember. But he goes, and it's like they don't know who he is. They can't remember Peter Parker. And there's a bit like where you're thinking, oh, she'll just remember now because the love is going to be so strong. But no, he just was like, he loved them so much he wasn't going to fuck up their shit. He was just like, good to see you. Good luck in MIT. And my young lad thought that was really sad. He was really upset. He was like, that's ruined the whole movie. And it put him in a funk all day. And also, they fucking killed Aunt May. Like, how hot is Aunt May? She's like nearly 60 years of age. Marissa Tomei. Mwah. The hottest Aunt May we've ever seen. They killed that bitch. That was sad for me. So, obviously, the restrictions were lifted. A lot of people I know, some cynical friends of mine, were like, yeah, for how long? And I understand that. They're probably traumatized. They probably don't trust the institution that has been sort of fucking them over and lying to them for the last 2 years. Not about coronavirus. I'm not saying coronavirus doesn't exist and people have been lying about that. Nothing like that. But there has been fuckery afoot. It's been quite obvious to me that there's been fuckery afoot, and I think if you have a look, no one could argue that people who took advantage of this situation, took advantage of us for power and money. But the one thing is, like, I don't actually see how we could go back on it. I don't see how the government now could turn around and go, oh no, We're going to impose all them restrictions again. We're going to reinstate the vaccine passes. How could they do that? I also think, in fact, that Ireland, because here's another thing, is that, well, in fact, I'll just say this first. I think Ireland should be used as sort of control study. It'd be like, here's a country, an island nation, less than 6 million population, 95% uptake of the vaccine, quite a large uptake, I think second highest in Europe of the booster, and coronavirus just fucking raged through the country. You know, we had 2 million cases in 19 days in spite of our massive vaccination level. So I think that should be used as a little study for other countries to look at and go, right, so look, there's a country that has a massive uptake of the vaccine, massive uptake of the booster, and still ended up with, 33% of the population contracted the virus within 19 days, and very few people ended up in intensive care. That's the other thing. The numbers just kept going down, even though Omicron was raging through the country, because the people in intensive care were on the tail end of that Delta vibe. And I would then, I don't have the deaths figures or anything like that, but Jesus, I just think that could be a little thing that other countries look at and go, right, that's a country that went through with everything that we had suggested in terms of legislation to eradicate the disease, and it didn't happen. And so maybe we need to rethink the strategy globally. You know? What's everyone else's thoughts with the turnaround? What's everyone else's thoughts on the easing of restrictions, the lifting of restrictions, COVID pass, etc.? Do most people think, regardless of their vaccination status, or do people think, should I say, regardless of their vaccination status, that this is a good thing? Or are people worried about the situation? Do people think that this is bad news, that we will go further and further down the rabbit hole of cases, deaths, negative impact of COVID-19? What are your thoughts? Please put it in the comment section below. And also, do you trust the turnaround? Because there might be something else at play here. There might be like a political capital ploy at play here. Definitely people I know are saying things like that. And what are your thoughts on it? Do you trust the lockdown? Is it just that we've embraced common sense and we're going to rethink our actions on this situation? Or is there some malevolent, politicized agenda at the heart of this turnaround? We also see that the UK has lifted all coronavirus restrictions, and in the US, they have stopped publishing numbers. And furthermore, in the United States, Fauci has said that everyone will get COVID. So the idea that we're going to eradicate COVID through a vaccine program and lockdowns is no longer the narrative. It's not the establishment narrative. The narrative now, and quite sort of quietly, and, you know, it was slipped out that, oh no, everyone's going to get COVID. That's what Tony Fauci said, right? And I suppose for me that is insane. The turnaround, or the fact that has become the narrative literally overnight, is crazy. It's a mad turnaround for it to happen so quickly. And is it in fact some ploy to garner or accumulate political capital? Our own government, is Boris Johnson in the UK, is Joe Biden in the States, are they using this opportunity to sort of go, boom, it's over, we're the heroes, remember that at the polling booths next time? Who knows? But I think that's been going on the whole time. Me, personally, I think that potentially those power plays and those wealth grabs have been happening the whole time. And is this just how, as the situation evolves, these politicians, political and financial elites spin the situation to their own advantage? Is that happening? Potentially. Put it in the comment section below. What I will say is that I had a podcast removed a month or so ago for literally saying what is now becoming the establishment narrative. Literally. Exactly what Fauci said and Tony Holohan said. So about the fact that I was saying that everyone will get COVID. I'm pretty sure we're not going to eradicate this thing. Now that is the narrative from Anthony Fauci. I had said in that podcast, especially, I was there going, sure, look, all of these people are getting COVID when we have this massive uptake of the vaccine. Does that not suggest, like, from a common sense perspective, that the vaccine is not stopping the spread of coronavirus? Now, that was just an opinion of mine, but my podcast was removed for communicating or vocalizing these opinions. And now, a month later, That's what's being put in the paper. That's what our own chief medical officer, that's what the American, I don't know what they call him, but he's the chief medical officer as well, I suppose. That's what's now being said. That's the new establishment narrative. So what I want to know is that if I said that a month ago and it was medical misinformation and I was censored effectively as a result of that, how come now Tony Holohan and Anthony Fauci, I've just realised they're both Tonys, how come they are now not perpetrators of misinformation? You know, and then again, isn't that crazy? Because rather than have a discussion about it, we go, no, that's misinformation, you're censored. And now it's like, oh, that's what's happening. There's a connection there between political elites, mainstream media, and how they manipulate the narrative to their advantage or to their benefit. You know what I'm saying? Do you understand? Can you see the weird juxtaposition of that situation? I thought that's really crazy for me now. And like I said, one thing I don't really understand is, and like Ireland should be a little piece of evidence or a study for the whole situation, is that in the rest of Europe, this shit is raging on. As far as I understand now, in Norway or whatever fucking country it is, it's now totally mandatory for vaccinations for people. If you don't get a vaccine, you get a €5,000 fine or something like that. And yet, in other parts of the world, the narrative is totally crumbling. It looks like we have a bet to a degree. And what do you think when you see that? When it's like, oh, but we've lifted restrictions here, but in other parts, and in the UK, obviously, and in America, they've changed the narrative, they've changed the protocol. But then in other parts of Europe, the situation is raging on. It's just like, what am I meant to believe here? I'm so confused. We'll get into this more in a couple of minutes, but what I thought was interesting was that even now, in this country, the Irish Times and other newspapers I just keep seeing headlines like, potentially 40 plus new variants here, there, and wherever. You know, all negative COVID related headlines, articles, etc. And, you know, there's such conflicting narratives everywhere you look. And obviously, for me, I just get angry actually when I see that, because I think that our mainstream media and other mainstream media around the world is manipulating people. They're fear-mongering, and it's obvious now forever. Even my mum says it, and she's quite conservative. She's quite establishment, and she's like, the amount of fear-mongering that's been going on. Even now, it's just like, I don't see any articles to say, oh, isn't it great that this has happened? Isn't it great that we look like we're on the end of this? It's just like, watch out for this. You better be afraid of that. Bill Gates has come out and saying the next pandemic will be even worse, which is sort of funny because he benefits financially. He benefited financially from the pandemic on multiple levels, you know? And again, we've spoke about it so many times before, that transfer of wealth. Anyway, don't worry about that for the moment. But what I will say is this. And the other thing, I touched on the Joe Rogan thing there, the 270 doctors assigned an open letter to Spotify turned out to be a total bunch of shysters. Dentists and fucking podcast hosts and over 100 PhD candidates. That's students. Over 100 students. You know, these probably woke, left-leaning liberals who want to mandate medicines and suppress conversations. That's liberal now, apparently. That's left-leaning, that ideologue, you know? But there's like a rock and roller, the ultimate rock and roller. Neil Young, anti-establishment head, fuck the government, fuck the record companies. The real deal, the original, the OG. And he's come out and said, it's me or Joe. And Spotify just went, oh, fuck off then, Neil. Oh, fuck off, Neil. And that's it. You can no longer listen to Neil Young on Spotify. And maybe he's got some other agenda at hand. Maybe he's trying to move his music to some other platform and he wants to do it under apparently socialist cause or, you know, some politicized thing instead of going, no, I'm going to move over here because I get more money. But who knows? But what I did think was interesting, it was just like, well, first of all, I was so disappointed, to be honest with you, in Neil Young. And then I was quite happy to see it was just like, well, look, mate, you want to try and hold us to ransom, give us an ultimatum, bend us over a barrel, get your music and sling your fucking hook. And, you know, fuck him. I'm sorry. He's gone. He's gone. He's like Lars Ulrich. He's about as rock and roll as a fucking, you know, Cadillac Escalade. We could go on about this forever. I'm so glad on a number of levels that the situation seems to be dissipating. And one thing, and you've heard my diatribes. You've heard me talk about what I think is wrong with the situation over however many months now at this stage. But what I will say is that one thing that the vaccine passes and the restrictions and the mandates were doing was that they were dividing normal, everyday working class people. I was arguing with members of my family. I was arguing with my friends who I grew up with via the WhatsApp lads group. And it was really divisive and really shitty. And so I'm glad now to see that hopefully that aspect of it, the divisive part of it, is going to be over, that people aren't going to have to argue with each other or villainize each other on the basis of their own medical choices. You know, so I just think it's brilliant. It's a great day. It's been a great day, and hopefully long may it last. But there are some key points, because as much as I want to be positive about this situation, I don't want to be cynical. I do think there are lessons. I do think there are key points that we need to remember, because they're important. Let's not just let it... Because you see the way now Tony Fauci's turned around and said, yeah, everyone's going to get COVID. How come that's not the headline of every single paper around the world? How come I'm hearing that from, like... And I saw the video. It came out of the horse's mouth. But you don't see that in the Irish Times. You don't see that in the Independent. You don't see that anywhere except for places like Joe Rogan, Jimmy Dore, Russell Brand, these apparent misinformers. It's insane, isn't it? The media lied to us. These are some key points. Sorry. The media lied to us. They use their power to fearmonger everyday people. They're still trying to do it. And what I think is beautiful is that people are starting to notice it. Now, you know, one thing that, like I'm talking about the media, one thing we've seen is that people like Jimmy Dore, Joe Rogan, Russell Brand, they're more interested in telling you the truth, because they're not out for financial gains. It's not why they're doing what they do. I just think it's interesting, or I think it's prudent for people to remember that, or to have a think about that, and to maybe have a proper think about where it is they get their media coverage from. I also think there was serious international fuckery afoot, and obviously that's the case with when massive sums of money are involved, but and billions are being made, etc. And I've discussed how I think that's bullshit or that's fuckery many times on the podcast, and there's no point in me trying to beat people over the head with it. I'm just pretty sure that there was malevolent practices playing out over the last 2 years, and it would be in everyone's best interests to go off and do their own bit of research on the situation and go, Jesus, look, that was bullshit, and that was put in place to be of advantage to this political elite. That was the case to be advantage of this financial elite, etc., etc. Again, the massive transfer of wealth. It's not been a bad time for people with money. You know what I'm saying? Our own government were on the verge of getting the fucking shit kicked out of them, and they used the situation to form a coalition and do a power play, and I'm pretty sure that everyone knows they're a fucking bunch of spas, aren't they? Stephen Donnelly, Leo Varadkar, Micheál Martin, that other little twerp, what's his name? Simon Harris, Pascal Donahue, Coveney, Darragh O'Brien. We know these lads are scumbags. We know that they have made a total hames of this situation, and the whole time, rather than actually implement policy that would be for the greater good of everyone, their electorate, the normal, everyday working class people in the country, they did what they thought would garner them more political capital. They did what they thought would save their political careers. That's what was really the priority for those people, in my opinion. What does everyone else think about that? Put some comments in the comment section below. Isn't it crazy? Another key point is that these same financial and political elites that I'm talking about, rather than, again, they just wanted to politicize the situation. They just wanted to turn it into a political thing that they could take advantage of. Even now, the turnaround, the easing of restrictions, the lifting of vaccine passes and stuff like that, that could be a ploy to generate more political capital. And again, regardless of the coronavirus, we still have massive problems in this country that haven't been addressed now for the last 2 years and have probably gotten worse. You know, let's be realistic. One of the main reasons that we've gone through such extensive lockdowns was to not expose the weaknesses within our own health system. Like, we're talking about a country with a 300 billion euro GDP, a 6 million person population, and we've 100 intensive care unit beds. In 2018, when the nurses were striking and they were on their knees for more money, etc., and they wanted Leo Varadkar, who was Minister for Health at the time, I think, to come down and do a shift with them, he wasn't interested. Those same politicians weren't interested. And, you know, after this is all said and done with, those heroes who don't wear capes but also wear gowns, they don't give a fuck about them. They'll be back struggling it out in the same shitty situation they were previous to coronavirus. Because Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil are corrupt, inept fucking idiots. And please, I would just implore everyone to remember that the next time there's a general election. Say, no, lads, we're not judging you on what you think you did in the last 2 years. We're judging you on the 11 years previous and the state of the country now, and how badly, how much more worse coronavirus turned out to be as a result of your tenure. That's what I think people should concentrate on. And then, like, I mean, I really feel that I saw the corruption of those political and financial elites and the lengths they would go to gain power and wealth. Basically, I mean, they politicized a virus. Thousands and thousands of people were dying all over the place, and these motherfuckers, and it happened globally, not as some sort of new world order global conspiracy, but the thing about it is these people, even regardless of what country they operate in and, you know, what their political alliances are, they're cut from the same cloth. They're sociopathic, greedy pieces of shit, and they you know, made individual power and money grabs all over the world. And I think that looking at it now, it's just totally impossible to ignore that. And this isn't a thing, this isn't coronavirus centric. You know, this is a thing that goes on since God's time. And how are we going to deal with that? How are we going to make sure that this world is an acceptable place for our children to live in? And it's not just some fucking gross playground for the fucking, you know, the neo-King Leopolds of the world, these fucking imperialist scumbags. How do we make sure that it's a fair and just and equal society for all? Because right now, looking at the way things played out over the coronavirus pandemic, to me, it's obvious that that's not the case. At all. I think we also saw the corruption of the tools that they have at their disposal, that these political and financial elites have at their disposal, the tools they use to achieve those goals, like the tech and mainstream media tools. They were used by the government, or in fact, was the government used by them to manipulate, fearmonger, and ultimately control people? That's what I feel like I saw from this situation. And I also think that now more than ever, the facade has slipped entirely. The veil, like the idea that these people are there for us, are the electorate, is obviously bullshit. I think we can see what their real priorities are. And I'm talking way beyond COVID here. Just look around the world at the multiple socio-economic problems we're having, and maybe transpose how you saw things worked with COVID onto them. Like, I think it's really time for human beings to stop arguing with each other, especially the majority of people who are just actually the same, regardless of our race, skin color, creed, and all that. We're just shit munchers. We're worker bees. We're trying to fucking survive. That's what we are. And I think we should identify that and be like mobilized, empowered together, and just be like, see this unfair, corrupt shit you get to do, and it's the way it's all propped up on our hard work and toil. We don't play like that anymore. So as much as I do think that social justice movements and all the rest are really important, we need to have healthy discourse. We need to have closure and actually resolve shit. And as long as we keep allowing ourselves to be divided by sociopathic, finite group of people in the upper echelons of society, until we learn how to not be divided by them and to come together as one, we're totally fucked. Because divided we fall. They say divide and conquer, but it's really divide and rule. I don't know where I heard that, but I heard that somewhere before. And if we're not careful, we're gonna lose it. We're gonna lose this potentially beautiful world as we know it, and it'll become some weird fucking surveillanced, controlled madness. And I know you might be listening to me going, that's total whack job conspiracy stuff, Ruben, but it's not. We just need to look around at what happened in the last 2 years, what's been going on in the world for the last 50 years, and just sort of go, right, yeah, no, this is not cool. This is not suitable for the human spirit. This is not for the greater good of everyone on planet Earth. Even though they keep telling us it is, this idea that this is for the greater good, it's not. It's for the greater good of a finite amount of people who want to generate power and wealth. That's it. Let's not fall into their trap ever. Let's not allow ourselves to be divided. Let's show peace, love, compassion, altruism to each other. And that's it. Listen, this is great. We're on the cusp of greatness. I really feel it. I love everyone out there. I hope you're enjoying the episodes of the podcast. I'm starting to get more and more into them again, and I'm happy for that to be the case, and I'm really happy to be doing what I'm doing. I feel like I've won the lotto on loads of levels, except financially. So look, peace and love to everyone. I hope everyone's doing all right out there. When are we going to get together and have a big face-licking rave? That's what I want to know. And please comment in the comment section below anything you feel, even if you want to say, Ruben, you're a dick and you're full of shit and we hope you get COVID and die. That's okay, I don't mind. Just comment, do it. Alright? I love you. Mwah!
Take another photograph and document a life that's right. And ways consist of simple things, the days of black and white. And faces from a humble